Also, Trump just recently linked his attempt to take control over Greenland to his failure in winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And it sounds ridiculous, but there might be more to the story. Who knows? Trump oftentimes has a little bit more going on below the surface. But here's his actual quote, just for those who don't know what he said. Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. So, one of two things is happening here. Either he doesn't actually fully understand how the Nobel Peace Prize works, and maybe he's shooting himself in the foot here, or he's intentionally signaling something else and or making some sort of a strategy with this. And in my opinion, you have to be either pretty ignorant or far leftist to believe that he's too dumb and doesn't know how it works. But maybe not, who knows? So what I wanted to get from you, Reese, was, can you break down how the Nobel Peace Prize works and your thoughts and opinions on what's going on here and why Trump would even suggest something like that? Because it seems ridiculous on the surface.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, he's hinting at the fact that the Nobel Peace Prize committee is located in Denmark. And so he's saying your country didn't give me the Nobel Peace Prize. He's like kind of blaming Denmark there, whose Greenland is governed by Denmark. But it's kind of interesting though, because we did an episode on this before, and I explained how probably the real reason why Trump was not even considered for the Nobel Peace Prize this last time, besides any political reasons, was just the deadline reason. You had to be nominated in 2024. So the last one, the Peace Prize that was given out in last year, which went to Machado, the opposition of Maduro in Venezuela, which she apparently just presented her medal to Trump the other day. Anyways, like she dedicated it to Trump as well when they received it, which shocked a lot of people. Yeah. But anyway, so it went to her, but Trump wasn't even in the running because everybody that nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize last year for the different things that he did, like he mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. He facilitated an agreement in Rwanda, between Rwanda and the Congo. He brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He prevented a water war between Egypt and Ethiopia. And he also ended a clash between Thailand and Cambodia. And there's another one too, Armenia and Azerbaijan peace accord. And then you had the Israel and Hamas kind of ceasefire. All of those things were brokered by Trump's administration. He was nominated by multiple people for all of that, but he was nominated after the deadline. All of those nominations would apply for next year's award, just by the timing there. And so I think it's pretty funny. I mean, it does sound like he's being extremely ignorant. Maybe it's for political reasons, but on surface level, it just sounds like he's being really ignorant, blaming Denmark for not giving him the Peace Prize when he wasn't even nominated for any of those things that he had done yet, within the time needed, right, in order to. So if he doesn't get it this next year, then, he can throw a hissy fit, but right now it does sound a little bit silly.
Yeah, and I can't help but think of and I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at this because this is typically how I go. Like, I'm not saying this is like a good thing or a bad thing, but just knowing how Trump does things, he really does the whole art of war stuff. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was I'm going to paraphrase the concept, but it's like, look foolish when the enemy least expects it, but actually be wise on the inside or something. Like it's one of those weird contrasting concepts where putting up a facade and it's all the art of deceit, basically. And so sometimes he wants to make himself look like he's dumb, when in reality, beneath the surface, his strategy is a little bit more complex and intelligent than what he's putting out there. But I have real actual thoughts on what it is he's doing, because it is such a strange thing to say, and it's almost like a little temper tantrum. He's just upset that they didn't give it to him, so he's like, fine, we're going to war with Greenland or whatever. And then that's, if you were to not look any further into it, that's certainly what it looks like. And I understand that, but there's something else going on here.
And I think I agree with you. I mean, I do think it's likely that somebody in Trump's team, hopefully or somehow he became aware of the whole deadline situation, and that's like they're not looking at things done in 2025, but they were looking at things done in 2024. But I do think it's likely that he's using it more of an excuse to kind of just push things that he wants to push. If like he
Yeah.
wants to take over Greenland, then that's kind of it's like, well, Denmark snubbed me in this way, and so that's kind of it sounds a little silly, but it is some kind of political leverage in that sense or whatever. Of kind of Denmark started it, and we don't have to be peaceful with Denmark, because they didn't give me this Nobel Peace Prize when I deserved it. It's a little silly, but it's just kind of goes along with the ability to say like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want to do essentially. So
Investing can be confusing and scary, but it doesn't have to be. Genesis Gold Group takes the guessing out of the game and guides you on your gold investment journey. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections, kind of like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer high security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there, 100% owned by you. So don't wait to get started. Visit filibustedgold.com today for a free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.
And I don't think any one of us are surprised that Trump would do that.
No, not at all.
Not even people who like Trump. None of us are surprised.
No, not surprised.
So I think that it's a strategy for sure. And while the left would certainly love to think that he's just an imbecile and can't figure it out and doesn't know anything, that's probably a little projection. And you might want to do some like inner contemplation and figure out why it is you think that, because it's not that simple. So he's been nominated 3 different times since 2020, which I actually didn't know that till this morning, or I forgot, one of the two. And like you said, Reese, basically as somebody in as high of a position of power that he is in, somebody's told him how this works. That you can't possibly believe that Trump was not informed how the Nobel Peace Prize works after having been nominated 3 different times, and he's just forgetting it or too dumb to understand it. He's got a whole team of people around him who are breaking this down and telling him what to expect and what to do with it and all that, if he didn't already know himself. So Trump is all about psychological warfare, and he's really, really good at it. He literally wrote a book on it. I think what he's wanting to do is control the narrative. And if he controls the narrative, then he's doing a few things: lowering expectations, he's removing leverage from any of his opponents, and he's making any sort of future award look either ironic or make him look better. I think that one of the strategies that he's implemented a lot is he has to angle himself in a certain position so that when good things happen, nobody can blame him for it and say, "Oh, you set that up." He can come back and say, "No, I literally said I didn't want this. I didn't want this to happen, but it happened anyway, and it's a good thing. So here we are." I think that that's one of he's very much long-term, looking into the future of what's going to happen way down the pipeline, so that he's kind of padding himself or insulating himself from any sort of backlash that'll happen much later on. And I think that it's all going to work because he's not going to take Greenland by force. So I think that is a misinterpretation of his statement. People are assuming that because Trump said he doesn't care about the Nobel Peace Prize anymore, that he's going to war or something like that. And he didn't actually say that. He just was making a scathing comment on Denmark, basically. Sure. I think that he's going to still end up taking Greenland, and it's going to be a peaceful takeover, and it's going to make everybody look like a bunch of fools. He's still doing what's best for Americans, and that's actually what he said in the quote. I'll read that little part again. He said, "Now I can think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." That was his whole goal. So he's just saying, like, obviously Denmark doesn't care, so it doesn't matter what they think to me either. I'm just going to do what needs to be done, and it's going to be the best thing for America. That means that he's got to take Greenland, because this is a huge strategy. If he doesn't take Greenland, we probably will go to war. So it's like this weird inverse thing, because Greenland is really important territory right now. And Europe wants it, China wants it, and so somebody's going to take it, because
Russia wants it for sure.
Yeah. Greenland's not going to be able to stand up against all of that. And so Trump actually, funny enough, is doing one of the most peaceful things by literally going over there and offering all of them money and buying Greenland.
Right. Yeah. So to voluntarily enter.
Yeah. So that we can just be there and then protect our whole Western hemisphere here. And so I personally think that Trump is like a master at getting what he wants without going to war. And his track record has proven that. Do you have any thoughts on all of that? Is that ringing true, or any holes in it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, the whole Greenland thing. My first thought is, one part of the whole narrative bending thing that Trump is doing when he's criticizing not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. which he can do anytime he wants, regardless of deadlines, is partially is because it's true that the Nobel Peace Prize committee it's basically fraud. I mean, it has in the last 30 years, it's turned into a propaganda machine for leftist globalist means. And we all know, like, they gave Barack Obama a Nobel Peace Prize for doing literally nothing. Like, as soon as he entered office, they're like, here's your Nobel Peace Prize. And it's a sham, when it's like, when it doesn't come down to actually what really truly creates peace. And it's actually just like, no, we just have leftist political agendas, and whoever we like, we'll give them the Peace Prize, and whoever we don't like, we'll snub. And so he can criticize it anytime he wants, regardless of deadlines, because most likely he's never going to get it, regardless of anything that he does, because that the people that are on the committee are not of the politics, where they're going to want to give that to Trump. I know a lot of people are really upset about the Greenland thing, and are really like, oh, Trump's a dictator. He's an emperor. He's trying to take over all these random, he took out Maduro, and that's a sovereign nation. He took out the president. Of course, he was not a legitimate president. The election was stolen multiple times.
That's besides the point, though. I mean,
besides the point, and he was starving his citizens to death, but people were still upset about that. Greenland, obviously, different situation. Everyone, I don't know if there's anybody in Greenland that's jumping at the bit to be part of the United States. I have no idea what they think about it. From Denmark and the UK and all of Europe is basically upset about Trump trying to take it. But what this is kind of funny, and this actually goes back to what I would say is the problem with the Nobel Peace Prize in general, and that is the fact that it's usually given to people who don't understand that peace is created through strength and through power, essentially. And so here's the quote from the original Alfred Nobel, he was saying it's supposed to be awarded to based off of this basis. He says, "Who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, comma, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies." That's the part I wanted to read. And then also for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. So getting people together to talk about peace. The first one and the last one are great. That one, that idea, the abolishing and reducing standing armies, that would be a leftist idea at this point, that America should be demilitarizing and stop thinking of it in itself as the global power, which we are. We're the global power. Yeah. If you don't like it, it is what it is. We are the world police. We are, and America is the world police. The only reason why Russia hasn't gone full blown and just ran over Ukraine was because of the amount of funding and military support that we've given to Ukraine,
and political pressure from us too.
Right, exactly. And Europe at this time does not have enough military ability by itself to stand up against China. So if anything broke out with China, it would be the United States versus China. That's what it would be. That's the reality of it. So when you look at the world stage and think, how can somebody bring about peace? As much as it upsets people, Trump taking Greenland, which is basically securing the Arctic Circle, which is becoming more important for security reasons, and as Russia and China want it, him taking Greenland actually would make the world a peaceful place for a longer period of time. It's just not the kind of peace that most people like. Most people like the softer, let's abolish the armies peace. And my last example to that, of course, is back to the war with Ukraine. There's only one reason there's a war in Ukraine right now, which is the fact that Ukraine gave up their nukes in the 90s. And that was a big deal back then, the denuclearizing everything of like, oh, well, we're going into a peaceful new age, so let's give up our nukes. And they signed an agreement that Russia and the US and the UK would protect them if anybody tried to do anything to them after they gave up their nukes. Well, then less than 20, 30 years later, Russia is invading them. And so it's like whatever naive person said, yeah, let's give up our nukes because that's going to help with world peace. It's an unfortunate reality, but on the global stage, like, peace is maintained through strength. And Trump does that, and people don't like him for doing that.
It would be great if we lived in a world where you didn't have to have the military or a strong arm to protect yourself. But we don't live in that world. We live in a fallen world, and here we are, which means we have to show strength, and we have to actually show it too, not just say we have it or pretend, and then, while nobody's looking, completely delegitimize our entire military. Cough, cough, Obama. Like, that's not the way to go about this.
Right, because it just creates a power vacuum, and
Yeah,
more heinous actors fill the void. Which is
yeah,
what we have with China, because China does not have the track record of human rights and freedoms, and not throwing people into horrendous concentration camps and harvesting their organs and all the other things that China is currently doing under their current
right.
regime. And so it's like, well, you either have the U.S. as the world superpower, or you have China as the world superpower. It's kind of like take your pick.
Oof. Yeah,
And we have the better track record, and so I would rather the U.S. be the world superpower personally.
agreed. And that's not to say the same. That's not the same thing as like, well, if somebody else, or if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. Those are not the same concepts for
Mhm.
anybody who might be misconstruing that. They're very, very different. Well, there's a lot of bad things that happen here in the States. Obviously,
Sure.
there's a lot of corruption and all that. But out of all of the different examples that you can really see with governments and how big world powers are run, I think the U.S. does, like you said, I agree with you, have the best track record on maintaining actual peace and integrity,
Mhm.
even if there's that string of corruption that is woven through it. It's kind of almost like the lesser of evils. Not that I'm calling America evil, but we do have some corruption here. So, but I'd rather deal with the corruption that we have here in America than the corruption that we have, for example, China. Much rather deal with what we have going on over here any day over that. Another thought that I had about this that I thought was an interesting thing to evaluate from like a psychological perspective. When you look at the difference between what Trump is doing and the Nobel Peace Prize, the two different goals are so vastly different. And so a lot of people look at the Nobel Peace Prize as this big, grandiose thing to get, which I'm not saying it's not, but the grand scheme of things, it's not quite as big as what I think Trump is going for. Like, remember, he wants to win. He's always trying to win.
Mhm.
So what is it that he's trying to win here then? Because that would be a prize that you would think he would want to win, right? But I think he would rather die in this lifetime as a hated president, but then make sure that in the future the history books look back on him with reverence as one of the most influential, best presidents that we ever had, than to he'd rather that over taking something as silly as the Nobel Peace Prize and getting rewarded here while he's still here and then celebrated and then die and be a nobody. That's kind of, I think that he's more of a legacy president, and what he's trying to do is completely solidify or unify the entire Western Hemisphere. And he wants to go down in history as the president who did that.
Hmm.
He wants to go down in history as the president who made this entire Western Hemisphere one unified world power against the other two, or in opposition to, or maybe allied to, it doesn't matter. But he wants to be the president known for making the United States of America into the entire third, or one of the third world powers in
Mhm.
the entire world. And that, if anybody's curious about that concept, we did a whole video on that. Troy and I did, where I got the title of it. We always pick funny names for a video, so I can never remember them. It's called Insider Leaks Trump's War Plans and Why It All Points to Greenland. We talked a lot about what's going on, like why Greenland is so important for that particular angle there. And I think that that's really what Trump wants to do. He
Yeah.
wants to be known as that president, and that's bigger than a Nobel Peace Prize.
No, for sure. I really don't know why he has focused as much on the Nobel Peace Prize as he has, and like brought it up as much as, the way he likes to self brag and be like, oh, I've done more, for peace than anybody, and I still haven't got the prize. He says stuff like that all the time. I totally agree with you with the world power situation. Again, it's like, I'm not saying this is the way that it should be. I'm saying
Right.
that this is the way that it is.
Agreed.
We are looking at a future where I truly believe that it's going to be, people call it the American empire. It's like, either we are going to have, that's going to be true, and we're going to have even more of an American empire, or we are going to have, basically the breakdown of the Western ability to create stability worldwide. And we're going to have a lot more, skirmishes and wars and fighting between countries and things kind of all over the place. And they're going to have so one of the two is going to happen. Either we're going to have like a split and like a civil war, at home kind of situation, and all the power is sort of dispersed and fractured into smaller, countries that are vying for power, or we're going to have a period of stability, kind of like the Pax Romana situation, where
Mhm.
it's like stability through strength of the U.S. empire is exerting its power, and even stronger, in order to sort of stave off a rising Chinese
Mhm.
empire.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd push back against you is, although I think you're right about what Trump is trying to do, and that he sees it that way, I think he really kind of sees himself as an emperor in a way, and I say that in a good way, because
Yeah.
I lean more authoritarian, and I think that the idea that people should not take power is silly and unrealistic and naive, and actually creates a worse world. Like, if you have this situation where you have somebody who's halfway decent character and the throne is sitting right there, and they say, no, I'm only halfway decent, I'm not going to take the throne, then you just opened up the throne to the worst actors in the world who are going to take it because you
Yeah.
turned it down. And I'm a believer of that. I'm not a liberal. I do believe in hierarchies. I do believe in authority. And I think that when authority is held by more noble people, the world is a better place.
Yeah.
But it's not just like, that's what I believe. That is what's true. Like, reality is undefeated. That's why the liberal democracies always bump up against the reality and get smashed down over and over again, is because it's like, reality remains undefeated. As much as you want to say, oh, everybody's equal and we're all the same and nobody should want power, should be vying for power,
Mhm.
humans naturally organize themselves in hierarchies because we desire people of character to have authority and power. And so that way we can make the world a safer and more stable place. The only thing I'm pushing back against you is just saying that I don't think that Trump does not care about the current accolades. He's very
Ah.
braggy. He loves in my opinion, he loves the current accolades. I don't think he
Mhm.
wants to end his presidency as a, like, where everybody hates him. He's always bragging about what he's doing, how much everybody likes him. So I think he's a little too egotistical to not pass up the current accolades. And I think he would honestly love to get the Nobel Peace Prize, because in my opinion, I think he's a little more, he's not that he's not future focused as well and doesn't want to leave a legacy, but I just think he really likes the current accolades as well. So
Yeah, and I should probably amend that to reflect that a little bit more, because I do agree with that. He probably would like it. My point was, if he had to choose between the two, I suppose. But yeah, I'm certain that he really does. Like, he likes a good old pat on the back, just like any of us do, and that's a pretty good one. So he's probably, if he were offered it, and like if he were nominated and he won, or I don't know exactly how it works, but he would take it for sure.
of course,
But
of course.
he's setting it up so that he doesn't have to, and if he never gets to that point, then he's already accomplished what he wants to accomplish, and he's already like received his reward in that way, if that makes sense. I think, but yeah, that was just more of like a speculative. If he could only choose one, he would choose legacy over prize,
Mhm.
because that's the bigger prize. But
Yeah, and I would say the fact that he's been willing to do things that have been very unpopular and things that other people would not be willing to do, because of the sheer amount of like media criticism, I think probably supports that fact,
yeah,
that Trump does have that mindset of, legacy and what's actually going to be good for America long term. When you have like, previous politicians that are like, if they don't want to be branded as a, terrible, horrible person by the media, and the media branded Trump like that from the beginning, and so it's kind of like, what do you have to lose, so.
yeah, true. I think he's kind of like, you can go ahead and hate me now because I know you're going to love and respect me later. That's the vibe that I'm catching from him, and
Okay.
but that's just a vibe. But yeah, we're at a crossroads right now for sure. It's either whatever, like Trump, and I think he sees that it's either we get taken over and the entire Western culture falls apart, and we're who knows what after that, or somebody like Trump steps in and fills that vacant seat of power, because that's really kind of what it's coming down to, where we don't have a choice but to act in one way or the other. I think we've been pushed to that point that literally it's those two options. Either the West crumbles or we protect it. And that's how we protect it. I guess I don't like it either. I'm not a huge fan of that. I wish we could just go to, I'm an anarchist. I wish we could just go to like nothing. We don't need any sort of oversight, but it's not
Mhm.
possible. I recognize that that's not a thing. It could never
Mhm.
happen. And so the second runner up is, I'm a little bit more like you in the authoritarian sense, where there are positions of power. They need to be filled, and hopefully they're filled by good people who can actually do good for this world.
Gold is not just a backup plan if the world falls apart. It's an investment opportunity that could set you up for generations. There's never really a bad time to invest in gold, but you want to make sure you have the right guide, and that is where Genesis Gold Group shines. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, their trusted expertise and competitive pricing makes them an easy choice. They offer tangible assets in case of emergencies, but they can also design the perfect IRA just for you. And they'll even cut through all that confusing red tape from the IRS. We at Filibusted love the genius design of the Prepper Bar, which breaks up into sections like a chocolate bar. But if you prefer a more high-security insured gold storage, they have that too. And unlike Fort Knox, the gold is actually there and 100% owned by you. Genesis Gold Group is a safe, simple, and convenient way to invest. Visit filibustedgold.com today for your free investment guide from Genesis Gold Group.